Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. This is episode 318. We're recording this episode live on April 2nd, 2026. I'm your host, Nick Roome, dealing with technical issues all day. Joined today, not by Barry Kirby. He's on holiday. We're here with Megan Michaels today.
Hello.
Hey, Megan, welcome back to the show. It's so good to see you back here on the show after a whole year off. Why just coming back now? You gotta come back sooner. We do have an awesome show for you lined up.
I mean, Nick, I've already told you. I most definitely. I mean, this is my third time. We don't need to space things out so far, but I'm ready for my smoking jacket.
Is it really your third time, or is it your fourth? We need to investigate this in the post show. Let's check it out.
We'll check it out. I think it's my third. Well, I helped host one time, and then I was a guest. Was I a guest twice? I don't know.
We'll definitely investigate in the post show. But right now, we're here to talk about South by Southwest, or for those who have attended, as I learned last year, South by.
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't have any program updates, and Barry's not here to talk about 1202, so let's get into the news. Yes, this is the part of the show all about Human Factors news, and the story this week is all about South by Southwest. I wasn't there, but Megan was. So, Megan, I'm so glad to have you back on the show to talk about South by Southwest. We wanted to have you on right after, but I think some scheduling conflicts made that a little impossible because you were stuck in airports left and right trying to get out of there, and so we decided that we would do it the next aired episode, which is now. So South by Southwest happened when it was. I have it on the thing.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah, March 12th through the 18th. Austin, Texas. I guess, I learned a lot about South by Southwest last year. I followed it over time, but I want it straight from you, an attendee. What is South by Southwest?
So it is truly one of the most unique conferences that exists. It is an absolute convergence of tech, of film, music, startups, culture, and it's this place where you get to go through whatever track you want to for learning and exploration, but also you never know who you're going to meet in an elevator or eating wings next to a billionaire. You just don't know. It's this place where no walls exist, essentially. And it's designed that way so that there can be this true emergence of ideas and connection and networking in ways that just truly don't exist anywhere else.
I gotta know, did you eat wings next to a billionaire?
You may never know.
Oh, I may never know. I'll know after this because I want you to text me.
No, I did not. But I do know that these things happen. I mean, I definitely, it's the kind of space where, I went to a session where I was learning about AI, and then I went to another building and I was in a room with 50 people with the assistant deputy director of the Department of War. Like, it's wild. I mean, the places and spaces that you get to enter into to learn and hear and participate in discussions with people is just unparalleled.
So, I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience this year, and maybe for those who have listened in the past and heard you last year, maybe compare and contrast with your experience this year versus previous years. How did it all go? What was it like this year?
So the big thing that was different from this year from last year is that last year, for those who might remember, the experience was wild and varied. We went with I went with a colleague of ours, Aaron. And so we kind of divided and conquered, and we were able to attend this huge swath of events and panels, and then we did everything we could possibly get our hands on, including we got blowouts one day because that was one of the random pop-ups that appeared in the street. Like, that was amazing. But on top of that, we ate all the places we could eat. We met as many people as we could meet, and we it was just, we took it all in, and it was fantastic to do it that way. I got a real sense at that point, and reflecting on it after, that South by truly is going to be the experience that you make it to be. So the reason that I got to go last year was because I was a startup pitch coach on the video side of things for the startup pitch competition that is hosted by South by, and that is a major competition for young startups who are trying to make it. And kind of going again back to that idea of, you never know who you're going to meet, you never know who's going to be in the room during those pitch competitions, and it's just a phenomenal experience for these folks. So I did that again this year, and we had 63 different teams that were part of the competition. I personally worked with about 30 of them, and so was participating in that. So my focus was really intentional in that space, but also I had things that I wanted to learn and take back for my own professional space. So I spent time with the DoD community in that area, and then there were things that I wanted to find, overall with South by, in terms of what's the through line between, startups and, government defense industry. Like, what is it? And it was AI all over the place. And we kind of saw that last year, that was a common theme, but this year it was everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And so, really the big thing that I started to notice in the startup pitches, it was common in the panels that I was listening to over at Capital Factory and with Red Thread X. It was it's not just talking about AI now. We're grappling with the real world impact. There were a lot of conversations around ethics and a lot of conversations about, like, where is the human piece of all of this. And so it was fascinating to see how people were engaging with that idea across the entire week that I was there.
So some of the themes around AI, sounds like some of the ethics around AI might have been pulled on. It sounds like
Mm-hmm.
where's the human, and the human piece is where I want to kind of pull on. Last
Mm-hmm.
year we asked you about um, what HCD or UX or human factors representation looks like at this
Mm-hmm.
conference as a whole, and you saying that the human element of having human as part of this AI ecosystem, or AI ecosystems just generally, is encouraging to me. Can you talk a little bit about um, the human factors HCD UX representation at the conference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the thing that I noticed, because you and I had briefly discussed before I went that it might be a possibility to, have a recap conversation like this again. And so I specifically was looking out for the design element of things to see, where it popped up. Were there some specific sessions that I could go to, that kind of thing? And what I found was, no, there wasn't. Uh, the things being explicit in regard to HCD UX, um, it wasn't quite the same as it was last year. And what I did find instead was that there was that more implicit thread in every session that I went to. And so what it made me think about was um, how does that shift our perspective in this space of human factors and human centered design for how we need to be speaking about it. And what I came to the conclusion of is that we need to be really, really intentional about what HCD looks like now. It's becoming just a natural part in much of the work that takes place. But to specifically call out, okay, stop. This is this strategy, and we're doing it for this specific reason because we know it's going to impact our users in this way, and bringing to light the just the very specific language for why it is needed, and it's not just tossed to the wayside and forgotten about. I just think it's going to be really important.
It it sounds like in a lot of ways this is kind of a double-edged sword where you have it's great news that, you
Right.
know, the human is included as a consideration with any of the systems or uh products that we create going forward, and that's a good overall theme, is the integration of how does the human use this thing. But it
Hmm.
sounds like the absence of a specific track or a specific set of presentations or panels about including the user is sort of the drawback to that, where
Hmm.
it's, you know, having it more integrated is good, but then that means, okay, we don't necessarily have to do more outside of that.
Yeah. I mean, there were definitely like design panels specifically, for UX stuff. There just wasn't the same focus on the HCD end of it, to understand why it's so critical and how we get to a powerfully impactful user experience, you know? Um, I think one of the best ways that I can describe my feeling about this um is when you're giving feedback to someone, right? Uh it's one thing like, Nick, you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Like
How do I
that's nice
improve?
to hear. Exactly. So when we in order for for you to really be like, I'm doing a great job, we need to scaffold what that piece of communication looks like. And it begins with, Nick, I'd really like to give you a piece of feedback about how this conversation is going right now. First of all, I want to tell you that it's really positive. Second of all, I want to tell you that the questions that you're asking me are evoking deep thought. Third, so you get what I'm saying? Like, there's intentionality and very clear focus to what it is we're communicating about and why. And sometimes, I think right now with HCD, specifically at South by this year, there was the and why piece it was just an undercurrent, and like you said, it's not a bad thing, but I think there's a potential to kind of waver on, we don't want to forget it. It's
Right.
really important to still call it out.
Let's bring it back. So so at least from your perspective, there were plenty of design panels, UX
Mhm,
panels, but
mhm.
it sounds like the and why piece was missing. Um, so I'm going to slightly modify next questions to go. What were your favorite panels? What were your favorite panels or presentations that you went to while you were there?
Okay, so I had two really really big favorites. The first one was, I just got such a kick out of going to the startup pitches. Um, the and here's why. Like I mentioned with at the beginning, um, this is a space where you just don't know who is going to be there, right? And working with these teams, I started working with them back in January, and seeing the progression of their pitch decks, of their confidence, all of that as they prepare to stand on a stage in front of, 300, 500 people in a room, and they get 3 minutes to basically say, here's my company, it's doing amazing things, and here's why it's part of the greater good, and why you should invest in us. It's that in itself. I mean, there's a huge wave of emotion that comes along with cheering people on and feeling excited for them. But what struck me most this year was the range in the level of curiosity around how do we make a deeper impact on the world that we live in. Not just from, I mean, it was just so cool. I mean, everything from like health aids to, I had a couple of teams that I really worked closely with, which were phenomenal. One was called MyFleetAI, and they dealt with sensors in fleets for the trucking industry to help improve coachability and improve the ability for drivers to stay safe and avoid accidents through predictability using AI. Another company that I worked a lot with and had a great time getting to know is a company called Tube-Bender. And basically what they have figured out is how to better empower electricians they developed a machine that can bend conduit in a way that is more efficient and cost effective. And they're helping to fill the gap of a section of the industry that can't grow fast enough for the way that it is needed. So things like that, when we talk about like, how do we use technology? How do we use AI to make our world safer, make it better, give back in ways that there are gaps? That was really cool to see. So the curiosity, the excitement, the willingness to put yourself out there, that is a big deal. There are a lot of people in this world who can't stand in front of a room of 30 people, let alone a room of, 300 people, and be vulnerable and say, I made this. It's great. You should think it's great too, So that was a big aspect. I really, really loved that. I loved being part of that journey and seeing people grow. The other thing, I think my other favorite session that I went to, and I've got the book here because the author was the speaker. It's a book called The Ethical Nightmare Challenge, How to Avoid the Worst of AI. It's by Reed Blackman. Got the book. Yay. Fantastic session about how we can, let me read the, maybe I can't read it. I was going to read a little daily. Nope, can't do it. Basically, he talks about how we can better navigate the ethics of AI at this point where we're going from a very, very narrow structured usage of AI to now we have multi-agenic experiences that are occurring, and we don't have in many cases ways to ensure that there's safety and there's protocols and people aren't getting all twisted and privacy isn't violated, all of that kind of stuff. So he talks about ways that companies and teams and down to the project level, people can address these moments where we can prevent AI from getting out of control. It was very cool.
I think one of the things that I would like to know is sort of some of the key takeaways that you are going to bring back to the things that you work on.
Great question. Because there was a lot.
Oh, wow.
So
okay,
no,
taking notes.
I think I actually wrote some down. I'm looking at my screen to see. Okay. One of the kind of themes, we're not at this point, we're not facing a technology gap, right? It's a translation gap. We have powerful tools that we have available to us. Now the challenge is going to be, especially on the human side, how do we translate those capabilities into the experiences that that people can understand, and most importantly, trust, so that they will use and can use them in a way that are going to be beneficial for our lives. So that's a big, big thing, I would say, in terms of my deepest reflection about the entire experience. It's that. There were a couple of, thinking over to like the defense side of things, there were a couple of things that I heard, which I found very interesting. In terms of one of the challenges that the government faces, for instance, is bringing things into operation quickly, right? So there are processes all over the place, and there's red tape and there's checks and balances, and things take a long time, especially when we're talking about research and development to put out new technology. And there was a phrase that was used that I found, I couldn't decide if I liked it or not. Ultimately, I think maybe it was just an important way of phrasing it. But the phrase was used, we have to stop keeping things in scientific experiment phase. Like, no more experiments. It's time to move. Like, if it's stuck in this constant phase of experimental action, like what's the line before we're able to say, okay, this is where we need to be. We're ready to push this forward. And then not only that, but cool if you have a great idea for the government, and cool if you've experimented on it. Awesome. But if you can't show how you are going to very quickly be able to scale, nothing's going to happen. And that was something that really struck me, because it made me think about, all the small businesses that are trying to get connected into the government space, because it really is a way for businesses to develop a unique runway, but something that is stable. But also, that's how our company works, right? We started out as a small business in that space, but the thing was, what we figured out was, how do we scale and do it quickly, and do it in a way that is not going to cause disruption. So those were biggies.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the translation gap. I know you talked a little bit about how do we get somebody to trust the technology that's out there and that exists, and that's like core human factors. How do we trust an automated system? Or now there's the whole subfield of, how do you trust AI outputs? How does AI output or AI results, how do you communicate what is AI results? And I find that fascinating, that that was a theme or a takeaway that you took from this conference. And I think one thing, or I guess a follow-up question would be, what are you going to do in your work to help ensure that people trust an AI piece of integration, right? Like,
Yeah. Ironically, I think one of the things that I connected with most in that space too, which is kind of what made me get to that translation gap idea, was I went to this session about AI in the film industry, and this presenter, basically, he showed like a 2-minute video that was completely put together with AI. But the way that it was done was through basically like that, an older film style, like you would see on like an 80s VHS quality recorder. And the language that was used was similar to that time, and the music that was put into, and the graininess of it, that connected with me at a root level. I'm a child of the 80s. I was born then, So like the imagery that was coming across the screen, I mean, I immediately connected with, and I had all of these, memory flashbacks of being a kid and running around in my kids and, you know, in the summertime um, and it made me think about, okay, why, like, I even got like a little bit teary at this video. It was all about, what was the video even about? I don't even know.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah. But it made me think about, like, why did I it he told us at the beginning, this was made by AI completely. Um, but within like 2 seconds, it that was like gone. I didn't even think about it. It lit like you felt the human layer of that of that short film. Um, and what he came to talk about was how, yes, it was made by AI, but it had to be told. It had to be provided with the boundaries and the parameters of where to go and what to draw from. So there was still very much this human element for that, there was this machine out in the great ether. I keep hitting my microphone. That's so embarrassing. It must sound awful.
You talk with your hands. It's okay.
I know. Sorry. So the piece that was just so interesting to me in terms of like going back to the idea of trust is, yeah, there's this big machine in the sky that is taking all these parts and pieces and then creating this output that is fun to watch, right? And that's super cool. But there was someone behind it initially, pulling the strings. And so as we think about what that looks like moving forward in the work that we do, you and I have talked about, in using AI specifically at work. I want to use it for the things that don't necessarily need to have my human touch on it, right? Like it's very helpful for me to use, an AI note taker to pull out, the summary of a meeting. And then from there, that is where I add my element of, my experience, my critical thinking, my background knowledge, my, current knowledge of the projects that we're working on to say, okay, AI, nice try. This is pretty good.
You're doing great, sweetie.
Yeah,
Great.
good job. Let's start. To then, shape and mold it into something that is going to be useful for our project and for our team and for our members. What then comes from that is, I have, in our workplace, I have a reputation, right? Like I do the things I say I'm going to do, and I work really hard, and the output that I have is sound. So there's that trust, right? And I think one of the things that we can do, particularly as we continue to use AI, is to do it in really transparent ways. If you're going to use tools, tell people, hey, I use this to help me, right? It's when you are you see it all the time. You see people that like do all of their social media posting. It's completely written, by ChatGPT. And that's okay. That's fine. But wouldn't it be great if we also said written by?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. My fear, which is, I think, what is already eroding the trust of the public, is that there's not the attribution of, this didn't all come from my entire brain. It came from a collection of brains all over the world that a computer pulled together for me and then spit out.
So much I could say about all that. So I'm going to go back to the video for a moment because some of
Mhm,
the things that you're talking about, um, I don't remember exactly when, but I know we talked about them on the show about how, in itself, prompt writing
mhm,
or doing or basically prompting the AI to generate a thing in itself can be considered art, and especially when you consider that
mhm.
AI generated film that you just talked about, they mentioned that sure the whole thing was generated by AI, but I doubt that the editing was done by AI.
Mm-mm.
I doubt that the storytelling was done by AI. I doubt, I imagine that
Right.
they prompted them for specific shots that were like 5 to 6 seconds each, and then strung them together in a compelling message. And
Mhm.
so you are using out some elements of output from AI and stringing them together. And I think that is the right way to incorporate it into our workflows, right?
I agree. And they talked about that, in the respect of, specifically in the film industry, how, like, AI is here. We have a choice to embrace it or not. And really at this point in Hollywood, there are two schools of thought. It's the let's use it and the like staunch, like absolutely not ever. Um, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that community is able to navigate that moving forward. I mean, you look at the innovation of any piece of technology over the history of time. I mean, a pencil was considered technology. And
I'm never going to use a pencil.
I know.
I do yeah, there's not just a dichotomy within the film industry, but just in general. There's a lot of thought about I'm a never AI person, I will never use AI, and that's to me that's the wrong approach. I think you need to know when and how to use it appropriately.
Mhm,
And, in the generative AI space for creativity, that is a very interesting conversation that I think when when you deconstruct it, there's a lot going on, right? If you
mhm,
use AI to generate an image, for example, it may pull images as inspiration from art that's in data sets that the artist did not consent to. There's
mhm,
ethical issues with that.
mhm,
The prompt itself I would consider is an art form, and somebody put the time and effort into it. Whether or not pulling the images and the inspiration from other things is ethical or not, that's a different discussion.
mm,
But the people who are never AI need to understand that there are still some things that can come from AI that help us accelerate different things, right? So just in
mhm,
terms of peeling back the curtain on show production, some of the things that we do is to generate stuff before the show as like potential talking points. We don't take them all. We don't, we modify them. We don't take them at their face value. We think about some of those things. We use those to ideate and generate. And I have more on this in my one more thing, in terms of like an actual work example, which is hilarious because I didn't think about it until we started talking about this. But understanding when to use it and how to use it is probably the better thing.
mhm,
I also want to talk about this thought about bringing things quickly, or bringing things up quickly that you mentioned in the DoD, and like kind of having
mm,
or sorry,
mhm,
DOW, and having all this, the science experiment piece of it, right? Having it not stay in that science experiment phase, and I think that's also interesting because um, there's a lot that can go wrong if you do things wrong. Uh, there's a lot that can go wrong if you do things wrong. But I mean, the point I want to bring up with this is that I think there is a temptation to go forward and use this to its fullest extent, which fine, you can. People have
mhm,
vibe coded apps and programs, and they work, right? Barry is one of those people who has
mhm,
vibe coded his entire application, web-based application, but he knows enough to make it work. And I think there's some concerns, especially in like high security projects, where that type of stuff might be too fast. And
Mhm.
so the counterpoint to that would be, maybe the agility when it comes to AI should not be necessarily within the development space, but rather in the human-centered design or human factor space, right? Use
Mhm.
AI
Mhm.
to iterate on different designs very quickly, to where you didn't need to do that whole thing, but you can just generate a concept, see if it
Mhm.
works. If not, move on. You have, when I say you, I mean the royal you, us. We all have the understanding of what will and what will not work for our end users,
Mhm.
and so we can very quickly take a look at something and make a quick assessment and be like, this is bullshit, I'm not going to use this, or this is actually, this is a great idea, and actually, yes, and let's do this other thing too,
Mhm.
and then work it into some other piece. So I think there's a lot to be said there about the iteration when it comes to early stages, and then the development itself. Maybe that is the longer train of thought, or the one that you take a little bit more seriously, especially in the high security, space.
Mhm. Mhm.
Do they talk about any of that when talking about scaling in those presentations?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's it's just a whole different ball of wax, right? Like you've got um I mean, we've experienced it in our own work. It's working in the government space and the various level of securities um that we have to stay within. I mean, it's serious business. Like serious. Um and I'm certainly not an expert on the security side of things. I just know that, um, you know, in our work from day to day, every single year and without fail, every single week, we're receiving information about the various steps that as a company we are doing to stay in alignment with all of the necessary safety requirements that, the government puts out in order to not only keep their systems safe, but it's ultimately in an effort to keep people safe, right? So, um, all of the work and the research that is happening in that space is done with those things in mind, and the companies that do that from the get go versus trying to retrofit all of those security elements, they're the ones who are going to be able to scale and move quickly through that because it's a lot easier to build with the end in mind versus undo and rebuild, right?
Yeah. Okay. So final thoughts, South by Southwest 2026. What are your final thoughts?
You know what? So I've been reading the book by Ryan Holiday called Wisdom Takes Work. And one of the things that he talks about is how, a lot of people, when they're having conversations like this, they'll say, what did you learn? And that's fantastic. But he posed the idea of what if we are asking people more often, when's the last time you changed your mind? And I love that shift in perspective. And as I think about South by, the thing that makes it so powerful, aside from, being in this space that you wouldn't normally be in with other people, is that it presents an opportunity for you to consistently ask yourself, is this the things that I'm hearing, is it in alignment with what I've always known? Or is this causing me to, shift the way that I'm going to view this idea or, approach this topic or do this task? And um, the reminder that it's okay to change your mind. We change our minds all the time. But this space, especially with the convergence of all of these different people and industries, is the perfect way and psychologically safe space to do so, because it's encouraged every moment of every day that you're there.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you once again had a wonderful trip to South by, except for the whole exiting thing. That was
bananas. Yeah. That was extra special. Thank you to my team for helping to carry the weight while I sat in a bunch of different airports.
Well, thank you to our friends over at South by Southwest for our news story this week. And thank you to Megan for attending South by Southwest so you could talk about your experience. If you want to follow along, we post all the links to our original articles in our Discord, where you can find us for more discussion on these stories and much more. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this. Now, I've been sworn to silence, but we have some exciting things coming for our patrons soon. I can't say anything at this time, but now would be a pretty great time to sign up for Patreon. I can't say what it is. I want to, as much as I want to, for reasons that will become obvious once once these things are live on our Patreon. But let's just say it has something to do with the lab and some of the projects that they're working on. And let's just say it's good stuff. If I do say so myself, that I have not had input into, well, slightly. I'm a producer. I'm not the creator of this stuff. And that is wonderful to see. So there's stuff coming soon. Stay tuned. But huge thank you, as always, to our patrons. You keep the lights on. You keep stuff like I'm alluding to in works, and you help support all that. You help support clearly my audio visual issues here on the show. What I'm saying is we need a little bit more patronage to make sure that I have the right internet.
You're looking and sounding better, though, by the way.
Thank you. All right. Well, I think we should go over to our friends over at the HFES Aerospace Systems Technical Group. This week in aerospace, Elena, Phil, over to you. What's the latest?
Thanks, Nick and Barry. This is Elena Phil again from the Aerospace System Technical Group at HFES. Today, we're excited to be joined by Dr. Lila Berger from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Lila's research focuses on team science and human AI teaming, particularly in complex environments such as aviation and space operations. Lila, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you all.
So we're very excited to have you. And maybe to start, could you tell us a little about your research journey and what drew you into studying teamwork and human AI collaboration in high stakes environments?
Yeah, absolutely. So I initially graduated with my bachelor's in psychology, and I knew that I wanted to focus on something related to human performance and the psychological impacts of extreme environments, although I didn't necessarily at the time know what an extreme environment was, or that was what it was called, right? So those types of interests kind of brought me to the University of Calgary in Alberta, Canada, where I studied under Dr. Giuseppe Iaria. That's where I got my master's. And so through that opportunity, I had a lot of amazing experiences that kind of helped to shape and refine my interests as it relates to human performance, really. And so this ultimately brought me to my interest in teamwork. And so from there, I moved to Houston to work under Dr. Eduardo Salas at Rice University. And that's really where my love for team science really grew and blossomed. And so after graduation, I knew that I wanted to continue to study teams in extreme environments, and there really felt like no better place to do that than at Embry-Riddle. And so I'm currently here as an assistant professor in the Department of Human Factors and Behavioral Neurobiology, and that's kind of my all over the place research journey, really. Yeah.
I think you had a very accelerated path, which was impressive. And something I wanted to start by asking is I know you have some recent papers that are more on the AI's role and kind of human AI collaboration piece. So we know that in aviation and a lot of other safety critical domain, people have been kind of advocating, saying that automation might be better equipped than human to perform these responsibilities. So in your opinion, or based on your research, how do you think we should view the role of AI in these systems? And do you think the goal of AI is to replace human as a critical component?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, sort of the way I see it is that AI is best suited currently in the supportive role. So I think AI can support humans during a variety of tasks, especially during periods of like high workload and stress, time demands. And so, from a human factors perspective, of course, we always think about capabilities and limitations of people. And so, I think that for areas where maybe humans might be naturally overwhelmed or stressed, or when they need to make decisions under, these types of conditions, I think that AI can serve in this complementary role. But personally, I advocate for their use in the supportive style role rather than replacing it.
And so where do you see those human AI teaming having the biggest impact, especially in aviation? Are there particular application where this research will be especially important?
Yeah, I think that human AI teaming is a really rapidly expanding field, right? So I think that one area where I can see, the research being especially important is in domains where maybe AI is supporting humans with safety critical tasks. And I think aviation is a great example of that. But honestly, regardless of domain, I think that focusing on research questions where we highlight and develop a better understanding of how humans view AI and maybe how we can develop trust, and really just how humans and this technology can complement one another the best is a really important area where I think I could definitely see the research going, and it's kind of even starting to blossom in those types of directions. But I think in aviation and in really most domains, I think that this type of research can be really important and have a really big impact. So yeah, absolutely. I definitely see aviation as one of those domains for sure.
Kind of following up on that, I know recently you contributed to a paper on AI's role in flight deck. Can you give us a bit more context on what the current context is? How is AI playing a role in flight deck?
Yeah, I think that AI has a role in potentially many different areas. I think one kind of component of that paper was just thinking about, where humans can be best supported by AI. So, what types of roles and jobs where AI might be a good support system, and where maybe humans are better suited for that specific task. And so, kind of from my perspective and my lens, I think in extreme environments, it's obviously an environment where there's a lot of these contextual features that are somehow unique, or I guess essentially extreme, right? So I think that during those periods where maybe there is increased workload or stress or time demands or uncertainty, and where risk is present and danger potentially, right? I think that AI can help to kind of serve in this complementary role. And I think we're still kind of learning how best to place trust and kind of calibrate our trust in these systems, and how we can work alongside these kind of agents or tools and technology. So I think that paper was really focusing on, you know, just thinking about that conversation in general of where AI might be best suited and where maybe that human should really take the reins and continue on with that process. But yeah, that's kind of just an overarching view of the paper.
So we were kind of lucky in aviation that, we've been dealing with automation issues for, the past 30 or 40 years or so. So we were able to learn a lot on, what is good human monitoring and autopilot and automation system. And I wonder to what extent does this knowledge that we've had for the past 30 years still apply with these new AI tools? And to what extent are they the same result, or is AI making that any different from what we've knew, since, the 80s now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, unfortunately, we're still kind of in the process of figuring that out, to my knowledge, right? And so I think that those are kind of areas where we need to further explore those differences. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with that sentiment totally, is like, how can we, better understand what those differences are and how that might impact human performance and how we interact with AI. I mean, I think one area that I go back and forth with in my mind is thinking about AI as this tool versus this teammate or this collaborative, agent that can help support us as people. And so I think that line can be really challenging to discover, is like where that line is and what makes sense when thinking about the agent's capabilities and whether we consider that a tool or a teammate. And so from kind of that team science lens and perspective, I think that's one of the major questions I've been grappling with, and one of the large differences potentially between automation strictly and this new AI sort of technology, is where that line becomes and where we draw that line. Yeah.
That's definitely a very intriguing question. So in a sense, you're kind of determining if this is autonomy so that you get to be teammates with them, or is this just automation where it's a tool for you? And based on your answer, it seems like that's still kind of blurry in research.
Yeah,
Okay.
from my perspective at least. Yeah. I think that we still have some kind of findings to discover before we kind of make any conclusions about that. But I think that it's definitely a debate that I've seen and kind of heard at conferences, and just based on other elements that I've heard from other people, is there's a lot still to learn, essentially. Yeah.
Mhm. Awesome. And then another thing I wanted to explore is, I was at your dissertation not that long ago, where I know you applied the HVACs model to aviation accidents. Can you walk us through kind of your main findings a little bit? What motivated that research? And do you plan to do more in that direction in the future?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It feels like yesterday when you were at the defense. Yeah, absolutely. So my dissertation primarily focused on analyzing the past decade's worth of aviation accident reports from the NTSB, or the National Transportation Safety Board. And to do that, I used a popular human error framework called the HFACS, or the Human Factors Analysis and Classification System. And I use this framework to essentially look at the contributing factors to these events, classify those, and look to see whether there were any trends when kind of comparing my findings from that current sample to previous work that's published using similar samples from previous date ranges, to see, okay, how has the field evolved in terms of these contributing factors? And because of my interest in team science, I am currently in the process of kind of analyzing that further, looking to see if there were specific team constructs that might have contributed. So one of the elements in the HVACs is that communication, coordination, and planning. And so for accidents where that was an element, where that might have been a contributing factor, I'm looking more deeply at those findings in a separate study to see, okay, what team level construct is that referring to? So maybe it's communication or psychological safety or trust, decision making at the team level. So kind of which construct in particular is that referring to? Maybe there's a pattern or a trend where one of those constructs is kind of coming up more consistently than others, and trying to see how that might be informative for potentially team training interventions. And so that's where I'm kind of looking forward in the future, thinking of taking that research. But yeah, I'm definitely very interested to continue in this area of human error. It's something I'm very passionate about studying, and especially error that occurs within and between teams as well. And so looking at that not only within a single individual team, but what that looks like in maybe these more complex multi-team systems that are very common in aviation. So for example, maybe pilots and air traffic controllers that have to work together. And so that's where I hope to kind of continue and take this research in the future, is kind of that direction.
All right, well, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you all for listening. So that's all we had for this week. And now back to the show.
Well, okay. I have to
That
say
was
this.
creepy. How
Okay.
aligned that was. That was wild.
I have to say, so that segment of the show is produced by the Human Factors and Ergonomic Society Aerospace Systems Technical Group.
Mhm.
Phil sends me the file every week, and And most weeks I watch it. Most weeks I do before it goes live, just to make sure that there's no like issues and that there's no playback issues. This one, we're talking all about trust, baby, because I just uploaded it and said, let's go. And so to my surprise, wow, how crazy is it that that was themed so well with our topics that we talked about from South by Southwest? Not planned, and how wonderful. So thank you once again to our friends over at the Aerospace Systems Technical Group for this week in aerospace. I love that segment. It's so refreshing to get that perspective.
It was fantastic. It really was. I enjoyed it a lot.
All
I know
right.
you said I know you said I could go take a quick break, but I watched it. I liked it.
Yeah, it's good. Good
Awesome.
stuff. I don't need to introduce this next thing because it's just one more thing. It's where we talk about one more thing. Megan, what's your one more thing this week?
Okay, so I guess I'll continue on the thread from last year. So I'm a parent. I have two teenagers. I have one in college and one in high school. My youngest just finished driver's training. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that?
Okay. So here's the thing about it. It is a very interesting experience to let go of the control of being the one who takes your family everywhere, and now suddenly you have to let another human that you created to do the driving. It's very interesting to do. But what I wanted to talk about is I'm very excited for my kiddo. That's it's an excellent milestone. We did not get Nico into the course as soon as what a lot of people do, because it was really important for me that Nico do the course when Nico was ready. And that frontal lobe, that's a real net development. That's a real thing. So I did not enroll Nico until it kind of came up naturally on its own in our conversations of, hey, when do I get to do this? And there was like actual interest in getting started. So Nico took the course. It was done very differently from when I took driver's training, and that this was not in person. It was, however, a fully synchronous online course, and they were the parameters of it were really interesting. The kids in the class, they had to be seated, at a table or a desk. They could not have pets near them. They could not be eating or drinking. While they were in the class, they got one bathroom break. It was very structured. And happened to be sitting in the kitchen this week for one of his last classes, and I was working away, and I all of a sudden he's like speaking in this like really commanding voice, and it was like just a really weird random statement about driving and a traffic law. And after the class was done, I was like, what was that all about? Why did you start like shouting about laws? And he goes, oh, well, the way that they make sure everyone is participating is the instructor would randomly call on a student, and you have to either read the slide that is up on the screen and all of the options for the discussion, or you have to provide the answer for the discussion or the question that's being posed. And I was like, okay, so not only were there really, solid parameters for the kids to stay in, fully focused on the class, but then they had to stay engaged in order to participate. And it's 24 hours of classroom time. So, I mean, it was a significant amount of learning that happened. But what I found to be so interesting was the integration with the actual physical element of things. So all the learning was happening online, but of course you have to do your behind the wheel lessons, right? So you go to a location and you have 6 hours of driving and 4 hours of observation. And when you do when he would do the lessons, we would get this like notification right afterwards. And it was an evaluation of everything that Nico had done during that driving lesson. And there was Nico's signature on it and the instructor's signature on it and the observer's signature on it. And all of this was facilitated through, they have this online platform, really easy to follow. But there were 2 things that happened in this experience. First of all, there are locations all over the state where you can do this program. And we signed up through one of them, and you're supposed to do your driving lessons within a certain range of time. And you have to do them within a certain range of time so that you can take the test. Nico signed up to take a driving lesson, but the next lesson was not available for like 35 days.
Oh.
So it was interesting to navigate that system because it's largely driven by AI capabilities. And
Oh boy.
you could not figure out how to let me look in another location to sign up for additional lessons somewhere else that was not the location that we had signed up to take the class through. So that was an interesting experience to navigate that. And as soon as it took a minute to actually get a person on the phone to like let them know what was going on. But once we did, it was like solved in 2 seconds. So that was an interesting moment for me. And it helped me understand that reality of like, how it's very common amongst, especially an older generation, when they are having an issue with something and they call customer service and it's just like the robot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, I want to talk to a person. I totally got that. Because there is that human element of like, if I just talked to a person, they would know exactly what I was saying.
You'd
'Cause
hope.
not everybody is good at prompts. So yes, there was that. And there was one other thing about it. I don't know. It's been a fascinating experience to see the difference in, in how the learning has shifted to match, technological elements that are coming from the government. So like now everything that Nico did is now like in a system and it's already sent to the Secretary of State. So, next week we'll go there and Nico will get his picture taken and get his temporary license and, we're off to the races. But the whole experience was very interesting to see how it's evolved.
Yeah, sounds like I still remember going to the like trailer classroom with the ramp and like at the back part of a campus and like
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I took mine at Sears.
Yeah.
Sears driving school. Yep. It was fun.
For my one more thing, I have so last week I had talked about getting in the weeds with Figma and trying to basically create all these micro interactions for for the various components and kind of reminding myself of how the micro affects the macro. Well, there's a new task that I've been looking at within Figma, and friend of the show, Frank, longtime listeners will know who that is. Folks who have watched our HFES coverage will know who Frank is as well. I'm going to call this Figma AI, a tale of 2 experiences. And, I've longtime listeners know my opinion on AI and how it all works and how it should work. And Frank's kind of new to AI and is using AI sparingly. But then we got this task to think about some future capabilities on a project, and we've been using Figma AI to see what a modern interface might look like for the various capabilities that we're like pie in the sky looking at. And my experience has been, oh my God, why didn't they do the thing? Why didn't they just put these in and containerize these? And so that way I can take them and modify them and do the things that I want to do with them. And meanwhile, Frank is on the line going, oh, this is really cool. Oh, it did this. And that's really neat. And so we were just having two completely different experiences with this capability within Figma. And it's rather funny because I had quite a similar experience when AI was new and novel, and I think a lot of people have this as like, oh wow, what can this thing really do? And that's a good. I was reminded that that's a good place to stay in for some things, especially as I was talking about earlier, this like iterative phase of including HCD within using AI in this early HCD iteration phase of like, okay, it doesn't necessarily matter that the components are broke. You can always fix those later, but like the iteration of the ideas is the important thing. And I think this tale of two experiences really, I was stuck in the weeds and I was like, but I just want to put this over here and combine these two elements. And there were other ways to do it. And it just reminded me of how we think about things differently. And that's the lesson. There's not really, I don't know. You can take what you want from that, but Figma AI. That's it. Enjoy some of the discussion about South by South. I encourage you to go listen to last year's coverage of South by Southwest, where we had both Megan and Aaron on the show to talk about their experience from the conference last year. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the coverage this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can join us on our Discord community, visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear and want to support the show so I can get better internet, one, you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you're at. That's free for you to do and cost you nothing. 2, you can always tell your friends about us. That's how the show grows and how other people find us. 3, if you have the financial means to and you want to support us on Patreon, we would greatly appreciate that. That's another way that you can support the show. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. I want to thank Megan Michaels for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about South by Southwest?
Feel free to find me on LinkedIn, Megan Michaels, just like my name is spelled on the screen.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me screaming at my ISP provider and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time.
It depends.
Excellent.
It really does.